Hey, what is up guys, I'm Exteria, and in this video, I'm gonna teach you guys one of the strongest openers you can play in the current patch, which is Nitro. This comp has so many different playstyles and many different boards you can make with it. We can play reroll, we can play fast 8, we can play AP, we can play AD. In order to understand how to play those comps, we must first understand the conditions we need to play this comp. And in order to play Nitro, you're gonna need to have Nitro units before the end of stage 2-3. Because if you don't, the Nitro bot itself is just gonna be too weak to keep up. So if you don't have it before Carousel round, there's no point in playing this anymore. You might as well tempo out to play a different comp. But the units needed would be to have a Kindred, Nidalee, Shyvana, and Elise. If you have Shyvana, you can easily get Nidalee and Kindred later because they're one cost units and they are way easier to find. Good units to pair up with Nitro would be having a Jax, since Jax also gives you Bastion with Shyvana, and Jax also synergizes with Jhin because they're both Exotechs, and on top of that, he also synergizes with Kindred since they're both marksmen. Same thing with Neferi, since she's also Exotech with Jhin and Jax. She also gives A.M.P with Nidalee. So these 6 units in general pair up really well. If you have this route, Poppy, she's a Bastion with Shyvana, and you can also play it with Veigar, since Veigar is also a Cyberboss with Poppy. He's also a Techie with Shyvana. So you can also play the Veigar route instead of the Jhin route. If you want to do a default opener, you could do Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw is pretty strong himself, and on top of that, he's really good Rage Blade item holder, also being a rapid fire with Kindred. If you want to do a regular Techie route, you can do a Seraphine, since Seraphine is a Techie with Shyvana, and she is also Anima with Illaoi, and Illaoi is also Bastion with Shyvana. So when you hit level 6, you get throw out +1 Anima to keep up the strength of your board. Good tip here is spare parts is probably like the best augment with Nitro, so if you have a Kindred and a Nidalee guaranteed start, you might as well pick up this augment because you gain a Shyvana. The item direction that you must know is mostly on your DPS items, and most of the time Kindred can hold it, or the other units I showed last slide, like Jhin or Veigar can hold these items as well. But essentially is, if you have a Quintu's Rage Blade, you can play either a Zeri route, or you can play Aphelios. Aphelios is not good with Nitro, but if you really need to, you can pivot out into an Aphelios comp with Marksman Vanguard, which is fine, and that can probably get you like at least a top 5 if you're like super weak, or just heavily contested. But for the most part, Quintu's Rage Blade is a really good item to play these comps. If you have a Spear of Shojin, you can do so many different routes. You can play Kindred herself as a main carry, which personally I don't really recommend since I feel like Kindred is weak. But if you do decide to play Kindred reroll, she's really good with Shojin. You can do Jhin, which is one of his best items. You can do Annie route, you can do a Brown route, or even the Dynamos such as Misfortune and Aurora. I also didn't put up here, you can also do Veigar as well, which is fine. And there's also a blue buff route as well, but blue buff is only good for Veigar and Annie. That's basically about it. But I'll show those comps after this. And then for tank items, good ones, the first item slam would be like Protector's Vow, a Sunfire, a Crown Guard, a Redemption, or even a Warmogs. Any of these tanks can hold it because they're just tanks. Technically, Nidalee is not a tank, but I've been doing a 5 win streak heavily. If I have a Nidalee too, I just put tank items on her to start with because she heals on her ability, and she does a little bit of damage. And later on down the line, you might sell her. So she's really good to hold tank items to begin with. And in honesty, she's low-key really OP in the early game, which most people don't know about. And I categorize these tanks as sub-tanks or main tanks. So technically, Jax, Poppy, Shyvana, Mordekaiser, and Galio are your main sub-tanks that you're going to be using for most of these comps. Funny enough, Shyvana could be both a main tank and a sub-tank, so it's just depending on which style you're playing. And speaking of main tanks, the other main tanks that's not Shyvana would be a Sejuani. Most of the time when you play Nitro, you'll be mostly playing Sejuani as your main tank. Unless you high roll a Zac. Zac 2 is actually very powerful as well for a main tank. Same thing with Kobuko. If you get them level 2 somehow, they're really good as main tanks for this comp. If not, you can play those sub-tanks. They're fine as well. The first version of the Nitro comp would be with Zeri with 3 Exotech. This one's actually pretty popular. Essentially is, to play this comp, you have to build a Quintu's Rage Blade since it's Zeri's core item. The thing that you need to know about this comp is having an Even Shroud over Last Whisper would be best, since there's really no units that can use Last Whisper really well besides Jhin. But Jhin really armor breaks on his ability. It's only 20% though. These items are 30%, so it is a huge difference. So if you do build a Last Whisper, I would recommend maybe putting on Jhin, since he's also Exotech. Exotech gives you more attack speed and HP for the more items they hold, so it does help him a little bit. This comp can also be played from a loose streak angle, so you can look for loose streak augments like Lost Calculated, which is a very powerful one for this comp. If not, you can just play win streak, either or is fine. Just have Nitro out on the board, and then just start streaking from whichever angle you want to do. When you hit level 9 with this comp, having an Aurora is really powerful since you have Dynamo with Jhin, and you can have 3 Dynamo, so it makes these 2 units cast more. On top of that, Aurora can throw in a +1 unit like a Kobuko or like a Zac or something if you have him pivot. And this playstyle is a fast 8 playstyle, meaning you want to tempo as fast as you can to level 8 on stage 4-2 or 4-1. The other best Zeri Exotech items besides Flux Capacitator, which is one of her best, is Pulse Stabilizer, Hyper Fangs, and this one is actually really trash. So if you see this hollow bow item, just know that you're not gonna probably win the game with this item since it's actually super weak for her. The active is pretty decent, like you can get top 4 with it, but I'm not gonna say it's strong enough for you to win the game. Main reason why, because it's an AP item, not an AD item for Zeri. And in the opener you want to play this comp is to either have Jhin with Kindred, Shyvana, and Nidalee, or you can do a Kog'Maw instead, and then you just temple to this board later. The thing to know about this comp is 4 Bastion is the most powerful way of playing it, so you can substitute Renekton out for Jax or something until you can find him. The other version we can play Zeri is the 5 Exotech route. So this means that we have a really good tank item, but the second one's also a really good DPS item. And I already showed you what Zeri Exotech items were from the last slide, but we're gonna shortly explain this slide since we already know how to play the basis of it. And that would be to play with 5 Exotech instead of 4 Bastion, because you can be playing only 3 Bastion at level 8 unless you have either a Bastion emblem or the best one yet, Exotech emblem, because when you hit level 8 you can easily play 5 Exotech. Just throw out the Exotech emblem into Renekton and then you just take out Mordekaiser, because when you hit level 9 you can throw in like a value unit like Kobuko or an Aurora or something like that. Just know that Cyber Coil is actually really weak. If you do decide to play 5 Exotech with Cyber Coil as the second item, just know that the value of this item is not that good. So it'd be better just play 3 Exotech if you see this item, or if you have a hollow bow in your Exotech pool, then might as well just stick to 3 as well. The playstyle for this comp is also fast 8, so you want to hit level 8 as fast as you can. And the best Sejuani Exo items would be Repulsor Lantern, which is the best one for Sejuani. It's her highest win rate item. Second in that would be Corrupted Chassis, which is actually very powerful for like every Exotech tank, which is like Mordekaiser and Jax, since this item converts some of your HP into a shield, and that's actually really OP. Therefore, if you build Protector's Vow on Sejuani, it actually improves the item a lot more. On top of that too, to note, Sejuani's best tank item hands down is Protector's Vow, so it'll be a good item to slam like almost every time, since most of the time your main tank's gonna be Sejuani. And then Cyber Coil is like the last one to take, and like I said, it's super weak. The last Exotech version I'll be explaining is the Jhin Dynamo. I feel like most of us know how to play this version already, but if you don't, essentially it's just hit level 6, play Jhin reroll, hit him 3-star with Shyvana, and then the other units you can, that'll be nice, like Kindred and Nidalee. If you get Jax 3 along the way, that would be nice, same with the Fury 3, but Jax 3, if you don't get him, don't worry about him. You can just fast 7 or 8 and look for a Sejuani instead. That would be a lot better to have than a Jax 2. And the direction you want to play this comp is if you have a Kindred and or a Nidalee 2-star as well, with a Shojin start and any good Exotech item, which is basically Pulse Stabilizer is his best one for Jhin. Same with Hyper Fangs is okay, and his third best would be Flux Capacitator, and same thing like Zeri. Hollow Bow is actually kind of trash for Jhin, but unlike Zeri, it's actually a higher win rate for Jhin using Hollow Bow, but you know, in the end it's still AP, so you're losing out a lot of stats for Jhin. So with all that considered, you should just force reroll. And to play this comp is you hit fast 6 and just reroll as much level 3s as you can. As soon as you hit Jhin 3-star and Shyvana 3-star, the rest don't really matter. Just fast 8 or 9 and then play for all Dynamo. This route is actually really good because it'll make Jhin to keep casting over and over. On top of that, if you get at least 3, that's good too. Just throw all the AP items on her. Another comp we could play that's similar to Jhin is the Misfortune route that is full Dynamo. If for whatever reason you have like a Hollow Bow in your pool and you have a really good start with a Shojin opener, then you can just play Misfortune instead, since Hollow Bow doesn't really do much for Exotech units. But if you have a really good tank one, for example like Repulsor Lantern or Corrupted Chassis, you can still play Sejuani as your main tank. The way how you fit the board for that would be Sejuani, a Mordekaiser, and a Jhin, since they synergize with the board really well. For Jin's case, we all know he's Dynamo, so it works for all these units. And then for Mordekaiser's case, he's also Techie with Shyvana, so level 9 you can throw in Kobuko to have that Bruiser synergy in. Or if you want to play a more value unit style, you can play, instead of Mordekaiser, you can use like a Neferi or Varus or something, and then just throw in a Viego. That would be a lot better, but in my personal opinion, I feel like it'd be more squishy that way. So this is the version I like because it's more standard, but essentially you can mix and match the Mordekaiser and Kobuko. It doesn't really matter. You can pivot a Kobuko as well with Aurora, so either one works. So just play your strongest board you can with the MF style, and just keep the core units with 4 Dynamo, 3 Exotech, and 3 Nitro. The other version we could play is Brand Techie. If for whatever reason you have a lot of AP items with the Shojin start, then you can play this as your base board here on the left side, which essentially is Mordekaiser, Nidalee, Shyvana as your front line, and your back line is going to be Brand, Veigar, and Elise. And these are units that can synergize really well with this comp. This is the reason why I'm kind of showing it like this so you guys can understand a little bit. So at level 8, you can throw in Aurora and Garen if you find them, which is pretty good synergy since Aurora can throw in a +1 unit. She's also Dynamo. And Garen can grant Aurora a Techie modification. Since she hits the whole board, she can debuff the whole board with the Techie debuff, which is pretty good as well. It's not too bad, but the concept is there. I feel like it's not enough damage. And then Garen can also grant you like, but you can do like Aurora +1 Kobuko for tank or Renekton. Either or is fine. As long as you have the core units here, you can just play mix and match with this. Like you can play, for example, 6 Techie with Viego and Fiddlesticks, or you can play more tank style with Kobuko and a +1 Bastion like maybe Renekton. Or you can use Poppy instead, you get 3 Cyberboss with Veigar. This board isn't too strong, it's just to stabilize you to maybe like top 5, top 6 so you don't lose too hard if you for whatever reason fail to play your board. Like once in a while this board can win, but for the most part, I would say it's okay. It's just a last resort comp to play. A better AP version round would be the Veigar Cyberboss. Essentially, if you have the Cyberboss augment, you know that you're gonna play Veigar reroll, but on top of that, if you have the Nitro opener as well, with Shyvana, Nidalee, and Kindred, you can just play essentially just all Cyberboss with all Nitro. For those of you that don't know how to play Veigar reroll, if you see the augment where it makes the Cyberboss stronger, just take that augment, and since you're gonna roll for Shyvana 3 and Poppy 3 anyways, you might as well play it with Nitro to stabilize you at the beginning, or you can play 4 Techie instead of Nitro as well. The concept is if you have Nitro opener already, you can start stacking early, so this helps a lot, and you can probably get the T-Rex quicker since you're gonna be 3-starring some of these natural units. Essentially is if you have a blue buff start, or like I said, the Cyberboss augment opener, and you also open with the Veigar and Poppy. This comp, like I said, you just hit level 6 and then just roll for everything 3-star that you can see. Then in fast 8, as soon as you 3-star Veigar, look for all the other Cyberbosses units like Kobuko and Ziggs, and you're good to go. The last comp we're gonna talk about here is the Annie A.M.P version. Essentially, this is more of a legendary board style because you can play either Aurora or Annie carry. It's the same concept as Strategist Annie, where you play Annie at level 8, so you can tempo to level 9 to play a better carry, which would be Aurora in this case. But to play this board essentially is if you have a lot of tier items, you might as well just play for Annie because there's not much you can do with 3 tiers. The only comp that can use it would be Annie with a Shojin and a blue buff. If you want to play a more budget-friendly version, instead of using Viego, you can use Alistair instead. And instead of Aurora, you can use Yuumi. Since Yuumi is an A.M.P unit, it will give Annie a little bit more damage until you find Aurora. Instead of Zac, you can just use Mordekaiser because he also gets Techie with Shyvana, or you can throw in a Garen or something to fill up the synergies because throwing Garen, you can make Annie to a Techie as well, which is a very good, powerful modification for her since it'll give her a little bit more AP and she'll also debuff the board. Essentially, it's just mix and match with whatever you can find. Just have a lot of econ, so you might want to take an econ augment. And if you have a lot of tiers, you can play this board and probably win the game with it. Other than that, essentially it's just Sejuani as your main tank without the Exotech, and you play this board from a fast 8 angle. And that's it to play one of the strongest openers in the current patch of 14.1b, which is Nitro. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section down below. Also, I know I've been slow with uploads. It's just mainly due because I want to climb as fast as I can. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.